Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I'm your host, Jim Graham, and thank you for joining me once again here on MMA World and MMA UK Facebook pages. Please like the pages if you haven't already done so. This week on the show, I am joined by my regular co-host, Kayla Beatty, who took a couple of weeks off, but she's back this week as we discuss UFC Austin from this past weekend. We're also going to get into UFC Orlando, Bellator 194, discuss a little maybe EBI 15, Polaris 6, and Glory 50 as well. So super excited to talk combat sports with everybody today. And as always, please comment below with any questions, comments, or concerns on the show as I welcome in my co-host and Girl MMA on Twitter and Instagram as we bring her on the program this week. All right, how's it going, Kayla?
Hey Jim, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's actually sunny here in Michigan, so that's a big bonus. Not
Oh,
raining.
nice.
How's it?
So you stole our sun.
Yeah, a little bit. But how's it going for you? I know now you're in San Diego, correct? Or the metropolitan
Not
area?
yet, actually.
Not yet.
Um, no, I had a few unfortunate things come up that have postponed, so I'm moving next week. Yeah, I got in a car accident and getting the car fixed out here and all that kind of postponed stuff, but I'm almost there.
Are you okay? Was it a serious accident or?
No, it wasn't too serious. It was just a matter of disputing it and getting the car fixed and all of that settled. But things are okay. It's just yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks.
I hate when that happens. I've been in a few accidents myself. Luckily, I've never been seriously hurt, and also luckily none of them have been my fault. That's
Okay.
another good thing too. But yeah, it's definitely no bueno to deal with that sort of thing.
Yeah, not good. Like the timing was not good, but it's okay. Like you said, at least no one was hurt, and it could have been worse. So, but I'm glad to be back talking MMA
Yeah, absolutely.
and
And
other.
this weekend was jam-packed full of events.
Oh my
As I
God.
in my little preamble between UFC, Bellator, Glory Kickboxing, Polaris Jiu-Jitsu, EBI Jiu-Jitsu, and then right here in my neck of the woods in the Detroit area, we had WXC 71, Night of Champions 10,
Mm.
which is where I was at Saturday night. If you haven't seen it yet, the pro fights are on Fight Pass right now, so you can check out those on UFC Fight Pass, so that's really cool. And then the amateur fights we actually originally streamed live on the WXC Facebook page, and you can still check them out. They're there,
Oh,
all 5 amateur fights, so if you want to check out some kind of local professional amateur MMA from here in Michigan, you can check that out, and also wrote a results article for MMA UK as well on WXC 71, where we saw some pretty excellent finishes, including a flying knee, a very slick duck
nice.
choke in the middleweight championship main event. So a lot of good stuff to take in there on Fight Pass.
Very cool. I'll check it out.
Were you at a local event this weekend as well?
I was, well, kind of. I was in San Diego covering an event out there, Epic Fighting. It's an amateur fight night. And yeah, I've just been covering the last 3 or 4 fights. And then they were part of an amateur tournament this last, or not this one, but the time before, they were part of an amateur tournament between Team Alpha Male and Jackson Wink. This time we had a couple of title changes. It was really cool. There's a few people that have been fighting for them, and I've been reporting and covering them for a while, and I was able to see them now become champions. So that was really nice.
That's awesome. All right, let's get into UFC Austin. Let's start there. 6 fights were
Okay.
on the main card on Fox Sports 1. Real quickly on the undercard, a lot of finishes on the undercard. In fact, only one
Yeah.
preliminary fight went to a scorecard, went to a judge's scorecard, and that was Lucy Padova against Sarah Moraes, in which Padova ended up winning via unanimous decision, but saw Oscar, boy, I'm probably going to butcher his last name here, Kayla. Is it Pichota? He knocked out
Um,
Adams in the first round. Then Alex Morono was able to knock out Josh Berkman. Or I'm sorry, not knock him out. He dropped him, then went in for a guillotine choke and submitted longtime veteran. Then Roberto Sanchez took out Jacoby Sanchez via rear naked choke in the first round. That's what's crazy. All these were first round. Jeff Neal over Chris Camozzi's brother, Brian Camozzi, submitting him in the first round, rear naked choke. And then Diego Fajeda taking out Jared Gordon via first round knockout. So the fans there in Austin were entertained to a very excellent undercard there with 5 of 6 fights being finishes.
I hope they got in those seats early and got to catch some of the action.
I don't know. I watched the Fight Pass ones, and it didn't seem like a lot of people were there, which I thought was surprising because it's not like they come to Austin every other weekend, so I figured they'd be there, but it didn't look like there were that many people there. I don't know how by the time it went for the main card and everything, but it definitely seemed like a late arriving crowd.
But we were entertained at home watching from home.
Yes, absolutely, and that's kind of how you want a card to start. And getting into the main card, it kicked off with Texas's own Sage Northcutt as he took on Thibault Goudy. This was a very close fight, Kayla. This was a fight where it kind of could have went either way. Both guys kind of had their moments. I will admit, in my preview for this show, I really thought Goudy would not stand a chance against Sage Northcutt. Nothing in his previous UFC fights really kind of made me believe that he could beat someone like Sage. But that's why they actually do these fights in the cage and not just decide who wins on paper. And Goudy performed a lot better than I thought he did. I think that surprised Sage a lot. I think Sage probably underestimated him a little bit, and I think that helped the success of Goudy because he landed probably the hardest shots of the fight. He was probably the closest to really finishing this fight in terms of damage, landing several powerful right hands. Sage had some trouble, especially in round 2, really getting off the fence, really getting off the cage. Goudy, not a great wrestler, and also was tired as this fight was moving to the third round. You could tell was doing anything to just hold on to Sage to try to ride out a victory. But in that third round, I would have gave it to Sage because even though Goudy had a lot of positions that were advantageous to him, wasn't really doing a whole lot with him. You could tell he was just kind of holding on for dear life and hoping that it was enough to get the decision. So I agree with the judges to give it to Sage 29-28. But this is kind of a little bit of a wake-up call for Sage because this is someone, in my opinion, I think he should have scorched, and he ended up barely getting by. So this is something he'll have to kind of go back in camp and really work on his wrestling because, like I said, Goudy is not a great wrestler and had a lot of success taking down Sage and tying up Sage, more importantly.
Yeah, I did appreciate, since Sage has gone over to Team Alpha Male, he did seem like he was at least a little more confident with taking the fight to the ground. Like you said, he definitely showed he has a lot to work on, but I think the confidence was there. And I think that's what's cool is, he's so young and obviously is already so talented with his stand-up. It was nice to see him, at least attempt some things and feel more confident down there. Do you have, because I know you can pull up the amount of strikes that were thrown in that fight, because that's what I was also curious about.
Yes, this is another reason why I agree with
on the fence.
Sage outstruck Goudy 125-30. And threw 204 strikes to just 68 for Goudy.
Okay, yeah. The numbers fly.
Yeah, Goudy was 4 of 5 in his takedown attempts, with 3 of them coming in the third round. But again, those were takedowns, as I said, that he couldn't really do a whole lot with, and he never really maintained top control really at any point during this fight.
Yeah, very close though.
Yeah, no, this was a close fight. Like I said, Sage does get by, but something he'll have to work on because, like I said, Goudy is definitely – here's the thing. He's beat guys better than Thibault Goudy already in his career. So just something he'll have to work on. And for Goudy, most likely probably gets cut from the UFC. I think he's now 1-4 or 1-5 or something like that. I find it hard to believe he'll stick around. And this was not an incredible, entertaining fight, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see the pink slip given to Mr. Goudy. All right, let's move on to the next fight of the evening. That was in the featherweight division, earning Fight of the Night honors, and can't really disagree with that. I thought this was definitely a sleeper fight on the card as 2 former members of the Contender Series there from Dana White this past summer, Steven Peterson versus Brandon Davis. Very intriguing matchup. I thought the stand-up would be pretty even, and I think that was the case for most of the fight. The difference would be whether or not Peterson could use his brown belt jiu-jitsu skills, which we did see a little bit in round 2 when Davis kind of ill-advised a takedown attempt, which was then reversed, and Peterson was able to get position. And I was watching this with a friend of mine. I was like, man, Davis really messed up there. I mean, he was, I think, starting to get the better of Peterson on the feet, and he went right into the ground game. And you could tell that Davis is not at that level because other than that, he shut Peterson down. Peterson was only 1 of 10 for takedown attempts. That's what he needed to do to keep this fight standing, keep it a 50-50 fight. And heading into round 3, where I thought it was even at 1 round apiece, Davis was a little tired from the grappling exchange, but you could tell his overall movement. And I think the fact he threw a lot of change-up or 50 power shots, he really wasn't throwing a lot of hard shots. And I think that was, for a guy that took a fight on 2 weeks' notice, I think was a perfect strategy to try to make sure he could go the 15 minutes. And Peterson obviously was getting touched a lot too. You could see his face getting bloody. And then towards the end, he landed that, he timed that counter knee perfectly to the takedown attempt of Peterson. And I think that knee right there won Davis the fight. I think it was going to be close, but that knee really opened things up, allowed him to get a gap of outstriking him by 20, 47-27 in terms of landed strikes in that 3rd round. And I think that helped him secure that 3rd round. And this was a very nice win for Brandon Davis.
Yeah, I think that knee secured him the win, but also secured it fight of the night just because Peterson was so tough and able to at least make it, to the bell. Because I think that's really when, like it already was an exciting fight, but I think just, that was what I saw on Twitter blowing up is, oh my God, Peterson, I can't believe he's still standing and still going. It was a very exciting fight.
Excellent fight. And for Peterson, obviously he's going to have to work on transitioning from standing to takedowns, setting those up a lot better because he does have excellent ground skills. And for Davis, I would like to see him on a non-2-week camp because I think that had a lot to do with him fading a little bit there towards the beginning of the 3rd, and I like to see him when he gets a full 6 to 8 weeks to prepare, because if that's what we get on 2 weeks, I can only imagine, Kayla, what we get on a full camp, because that was pretty good for 2 weeks notice.
Yeah, no, definitely.
All right, let's get to the next fight of the evening, Curtis Melander versus Thiago Alves. My goodness, it's a scary dude. The whole time I was watching this fight, I was just waiting for him to do something crazy athletic and crazy devastating. And we thought we got the finish there in the 1st round, but Curtis did a good job of not overextending himself because Thiago is still a dangerous guy, even at 34 years old. Still not a guy you want to just wander into, especially when you're so much bigger and taller and have such a reach advantage. You definitely just don't want to wander in to the pocket and
let him catch
get caught with something crazy. And then in round 2, he went that same strategy. He was doing a great job staying on the outside. I thought Thiago adjusted well after getting hurt in round 1. I think he started to figure out the timing of Melander. Saw him start to land a little more kicks. But Melander was able to take them. It didn't seem like they bothered him that much. And he waited and saw an opportunity. And this is something that only Curtis Melander can do. When you're 6'3" like this, this is not a move that other people can do. He threw that knee standing, hitting to the head of Thiago Alves with no jump or tippy toes, and hit it right through the guard of Alves, knocking him out cold. And I agree with the referee's decision, obviously Melander's decision to not go in and throw some more. You could tell it was not going to end well for Thiago. And that's the type of things this guy brings to the table that you can't really prepare for. There's not too many people you can bring in to emulate Curtis Melander. And moves like this shows you why this guy can be a force to be reckoned with, even at 30 years old in the UFC, because he's just so athletic and so big. It was an incredible debut, and I'm excited for this guy in the welterweight division, because if he can do things like that, he has a very bright future.
Well, I was just going to say the same thing, to make your debut, and there weren't really nerves or anything there. You could tell, he was in the fight, like you said, saw those opportunities and wants to give us exciting, explosive finishes. And again, to what you're saying, just the way he's built, he's just another exciting fighter to just add to 170. And I think that all of the guys in 170 were definitely watching that debut and probably got a little worried about Curtis Millender. And I'm excited. I hope he fights again soon, just because it was such a quick finish.
Yeah, and I think he'll probably take a little recovery because, like I said, he did eat a few kicks, so I'm sure a couple weeks, but then we'll look at getting him back in there. But I think honestly, I know he's fighting this weekend, and some people think it might be too quick, but if the winner of Mike Perry versus Max Griffin, I think, is a very likely candidate fighting Curtis Millender next. What do you think?
That could be fun.
I think so. All right. Let's get to the next fight at lightweight. James Vick versus Francisco Trinaldo. Another super close fight, Kayla. And once again, the Texecutioner gets it done in his home state of Texas. I believe now he's 4-1 with the UFC fighting in his home state, so he really loves fighting at home. Very close fight, like I said. The first round, Vick did outstrike Trinaldo, but Trinaldo had those 2 takedowns. Probably still would have gave I think I probably would have gave Trinaldo the first round. Round 2, definitely Vick, outstriking him 25-9. And then the third round was definitely Vick, outstriking only 20-10. But you could tell he was being more active. Trinaldo, even though kind of chasing James Vick, wasn't really landing a whole lot. I mean, landing 10 strikes in a 5-minute round is not very good.
Yeah.
And I think, and much like Curtis Millender, this is one of the things James Vick brings to the table. Another guy, 6'3", fighting in the lightweight division. Very few guys you can bring in to prepare like that. Again, the biggest criticism of James Vick is still leaves his head too far straight up, doesn't really move his head movement. That's something he's still going to have to work on. Got a little better in this fight, but I thought he did a great job using his kicks to keep Trinaldo from really getting inside to land one of those big bombs. I thought he did a good job for the most part stopping the takedown. I know Trinaldo was 3 for 3 on his takedown attempts, but you would think Trinaldo would try more. And I think because of those kicks, keeping Trinaldo at length, not allowing him really to get inside to do a double leg, I think was paramount, because I think Trinaldo needed more takedowns, because I think he definitely has the advantage on the ground. I think he is the stronger grappler, but never really, other than that first round, could maintain position on Vick. And I think that's credit to Vick's kicks and length, keeping someone like Trinaldo away from him, and not surprised that he was able to get the victory. Again, especially when you look at striking numbers. I mean, he outstriked him 72-27. I think it would have been a little bit of a robbery had Trinaldo got 2 rounds, just based off of those numbers alone.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you know your strengths and know that you are a 6'3" guy in 155 division, like my friend was showing me old Pride videos, just some of his favorite fights in Pride, and I think it was Pride. Yeah, I want to say it was Pride, but I love those matchups where you had just like giants against these small guys, and see how they can figure each other out. And James Vick to me is one of those like Pride giants, or if we get a giant, he's one in the UFC, that these guys are just going to have to figure out how to break that down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe he was ranked 14 coming into this fight, and Trinaldo was 11, so obviously going to move up in the rankings. I saw after the fight he was calling actually Kevin Lee out after the fight, and I think that would be a tremendous matchup.
With Kevin Lee, yeah, maybe you can figure him out.
So we'll see. But I would like that fight. Co-main events of the evening in the heavyweight division, Derek Lewis against Marcin Tybura. Boy, I tell you what, how can you not like Derek Lewis? This guy not only is entertaining in fights, he's entertaining on the microphone. I don't know what I was more excited for, Kayla, Derek Lewis winning or hearing Derek Lewis's post-fight comments, even though I didn't know what he was going to say. I don't know what's more intriguing about the guy, what he's going to say on the mic or what he's going to do in the cage. And luckily for us, he entertained us in both fashions. Getting to the fight, though, at hand before we get to like I said, the stellar comments. First round, very close. Lewis definitely had some moments where he had Tybura rocked, but Tybura was able to outstrike, actually, Lewis. And Lewis himself actually landed a takedown, Round two, you probably could have actually called a 10-8 round, Kayla. Tybura really started to impose his will on the ground. There was I think a time in the first round where Derek Lewis just gave up his back very easily, and because of his strength and size, was able to just kind of shuck Tybura off. And round two wasn't really able to do that quite as much. You could tell Derek Lewis maybe kind of slowing down, maybe the energy wasn't quite there, and Tybura really put it to Derek Lewis. Had control of the back, kind of had control of the mount, was really all over the Black Beast. And then in round three, it looked like more of the same was going to be happening, but in a clinch, Derek Lewis saw an opportunity to explode. He did in the clinch, kind of throwing Tybura off of him, and then landed a huge right hand, followed up with a couple more, and that was all she wrote there in the third round, as Derek Lewis kind of somewhat, I would say, kind of a comeback victory for him, as it was looking like he might lose the decision 29-28, and that's just what this guy is capable of. He can explode at any moment and put you out. He's just such a strong individual. There are things that he can do I'm not sure if I've seen any heavyweight be able to do. He's just a unique blend of athleticism and strength and just, I don't know, raw power that you don't see too often in any weight class. And that's just what he's able to do. And for Tybura, it's got to be disappointing to lose, but I think the way he lost, considering, like I said, it looked like he was going to be able to grind out a victory, definitely had to be frustrating for the man from Poland.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed he had his head down, and I get it. It's frustrating, but I think that, not taking anything away from Derek Lewis, because I think he also for sure looked like he's evolved, his composure in there, and like you said, still going into the third round and looking for those opportunities and finding those opportunities and having that power to get a finish and turn that fight around is huge and very exciting, and why, we love watching him. But I've been such a fan of Tybura, since his last 2 or 3 fights. I think that he's someone that, stays active and continue to go for submissions or, takedowns. And he was staying active and winning the fight. So I think he's also someone that, just needs to keep having these fights with certain, men in his division and experience their power. But I think that he's someone that's one to watch, and he's still very young too. But I actually favored this fight more than the Peterson and Davis one as far as performance of the night. I just found this one more exciting. But it was a good win for Derek Lewis. I'm not as big of a fan as the things he says on the mic. I know that they're, absurd and crazy and funny to some people, but I also think that he's making it really hard to be a company guy. And I think that he has obviously the athletic talent to become a champion. But if you say certain things on the mic, how are they going to let you represent and hold that belt? Or at least, you could still, yes, be a champion, but it's going to be really hard to promote and sell a guy that you're worried he's going to jump on the mic and just completely shock you with something that's a little disrespectful. But that's just my opinion.
Let's get to the first part of his comments where, of course, this is the big thing with Derek Lewis a couple fights ago against Travis Brown. He said he wasn't hurt. He just forgot to go to the bathroom before the fight.
That was a nice way of saying
right.
It. He used other words. But.
Right. So this time they asked him, and he said, oh, man, he goes, I forgot to eat. He said he forgot to eat before the fight, so that was great. So now we have 2 things to check, like, did Derek Lewis go to the bathroom before the fight? And
did he
before
eat?
The fight? So now we have that. Then announcing he was going deep on his wife, which was brought up again at the press conference. Man, I don't know. He's one of the, I think I was talking with a friend. I think the reason he's so funny is because he seems like such kind of a quiet guy, a soft-spoken guy, a guy that, doesn't really, isn't that vocal. But when he gets the opportunity to speak, he says something you don't expect him to say. And I think that's why they're so funny, is because you don't expect him. You expect him to kind of, like I said, be a soft-spoken guy. And, when he does things like saving 30 people from the hurricane and stuff, that's what kind of makes these moments so funny, because he legitimately is a very nice guy and a very good guy. He does a lot of great things for his community and his family and everything. So I think that's what makes these comments so funny, is that he legitimately is a good guy.
And I think his delivery too. he knows what he's
Yeah,
about to say, and he
he's
doesn't
very
even crack a
nonchalant about it.
smile. Yeah, he has this like poker face, and then it's just like, what the hell did you just say? Yeah, I mean, I was a fan of him. The comment about his wife, I think, was a little disrespectful. I did laugh though. I saw an article pop up yesterday that said that he wasn't able to fulfill the request or whatever he was setting up with his wife because of injury. That he said,
Right,
"Oh, unfortunately, it didn't get to
the
happen."
back
I'm
injury,
like, "Oh
right.
my god."
But he said the back. Honestly, in the post fight, I think it was the not the one in the cage. And also, when he said that, Jimmy Smith just walking. He's like, "Well, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm gonna get out of
Yeah,
here."
like,
I was just like, and also the fact he was like, I don't know if you know this man. You've been in Bellator, so I don't know if you know how this works over here. I thought that was great that he, kind of brought that up because the people in the UFC are. I don't know if they're told not to mention Bellator by name, but they almost never say Bellator. They always just say another
yeah.
organization. So I also thought that was great that Derek Lewis just flat out said Bellator. And I thought that was great
That's
too
what I'm
to
saying
bring
is how
up.
are you going to be a champion if you like have word vomit like that?
I thought it was great. And I think Jimmy liked it, but like you said, he was just kind of like, I'm going to get out of here. It's just, uh,
I mean, yeah, it does make it entertaining.
and then we got James Anthony, our colleague here, commenting. Thank God Kayla's back. Better
Aw,
than
me
Lewis.
too.
Lewis was awful. Uh, and then Nick Diaz. Well, Nick might have been there, but Nate was the one in the crowd. Nate Diaz and his blunt stole the show. Yeah, talk about if you were worried about what Derek Lewis was going to say. How about what Nate Diaz on the camera supporting his boy Yancy Medeiros? My goodness, was that worse
These
than what
guys,
Derek Lewis said?
well, that's what I'm saying is they're making it really hard to book these like big title fights when you're doing stuff like that on camera and saying things like that.
I mean, yeah,
I don't know.
everyone knew what it was, number one, and number two, pretty much smoking of any sort in any arena is illegal. So if he actually would have lit it up, I wonder if they actually would have escorted him from the arena.
And those little children right next to him that are just like, "What's that?" Like,
Yeah,
oh my god.
yeah. All right, let's get to the main event. Speaking of Nate Diaz's friend, Yancy Medeiros, he was in the main event against one of his former opponents, in the Cowboy Donald Cerrone. Got to admit, very impressed for Donald Cerrone. This was a very nice bounce back win over a guy who I thought had a lot of momentum coming into this fight, coming off what I thought was the fight of the year in 2017 in Yancy Medeiros. And really, Kayla, this was a pretty even fight. I thought both guys had their moments. I thought both guys were able to land some pretty effective strikes, but it was Cerrone that was able to land the hard punches there. And not only the fact that he just got a finish, Kayla, but the fact he was able to kind of have that presence of mind knowing that if he just went for it, he might be able to get it and get Yancy out of the first round before that thing, the horn blew. And I think that was what's super impressive because I think a lot of guys might have not been able to get the job done. I think a lot of times just the ref might have let that go knowing the horn was about to ring. So I think that was the most impressive thing is that he went in there kind of with the sense of urgency once he saw Yancy started wobbling, knowing like, I got to hurry up and get this finish because this guy definitely shows that he can recover. If you saw his last fight against Oliveira, so if I got a chance to put him away, I got to do it now because he could come back and do the same thing to me in round two.
He's so dangerous. Yeah. No, I'm so glad you said that because that's exactly what I was impressed the most by with Cowboy. And I think that's just his experience and, fight IQ and being present and really wanting that win so much is like you said, he was so desperate to like, hey, I got this guy wobbly and I only have a little bit of time left, but I know that I can finish him. Yeah, the only thing that I was disappointed with this fight is I just wanted to see the two compete against each other for a little bit longer. But I'm happy that Cowboy got that win. I think that a lot of people are fans of Yancy from his previous fight or previous fights before that, but especially with this fight too, just the way that he was promoted and the way he was speaking and getting to know him a little bit more. He's going to come back and obviously is one that is entertaining to fans. But yeah, great win for Cowboy. I'm glad he's back.
Now the interesting thing about this fight was Cowboy gets the win. Obviously, this was at welterweight, but there's now rumblings of him returning back to 155. Yeah. While he's had some success at welterweight, he obviously had the loss to Darren Till, the very close loss to, Robbie Lawler. He kind of got smoked there by Jorge Masvidal, but obviously was able to come back and get a win over a very tough guy in Nancy Medeiros in the main event. So I'm not against him moving to 155, but I do think he's better at 170 because, again, he's not getting any younger. And the older you get, the harder that weight cut becomes. And as we know, the UFC is starting to implement stricter weight cut policies. We were kind of talking about with the Drew Dober thing, where even though he made the weight fine, California still said he couldn't fight at 155 for his next fight, so he had to move up to 170. And I think with things like that becoming more commonplace, I think it would be better for Cowboy just to stick at 170, because I actually think that it may be just harder on himself going to 155. Especially since I think we're kind of moving away from really big weight cuts, and he is a very big lightweight. I remember I interviewed him a couple of years ago for his Anthony Pettis fight, and I think it was the Wednesday or Thursday before the fight, and I asked him, I was like, so how much weight do you have left to cut? And he goes, not that much. I'm only at 175 right now. You know what I mean? So This is a guy that during fight week is cutting, 15 or more pounds. So with them kind of getting away from people doing that drastic of a cut, Kayla, I think it would be in his best interest to stick at 170. But if he feels that he's now more confident about the weight cut, then by all means, I guess go for it. But that's the only thing I worry about with him moving back down to 155.
Yeah, I think there's a few things coming into play with him just putting that out there. I think that, it's a matter of maybe he was feeling frustrated that he was coming off those 3 losses. At 170. And I think, too, we're finally seeing that 155 is starting to get some momentum with what's going on with the belt, whether Connor's going to be stripped or come back or what have you. We know that there's something's going to happen very soon with that belt. So he might be seeing that, okay, I can jump back there and actually, maybe have a title shot or maybe have a size advantage over a person like Khabib. But I think that I agree with you. I think when it comes down to it, he was facing 3 top guys. Darren Till, we don't have too much to say about him, but obviously we all see his talent and see that he's going to be, a top contender and already is. But I think that, like you said, with the weight cut, I just think that he's, like you said, he's getting older and it's just going to be harder and rules are getting, more strict with it, that I think that he should probably stay at 170. Since going to 170, he was saying that's where he felt more comfortable and more healthy. So I don't think he should move down to 155. 155 also has some tough guys too. So if you're struggling through a weight cut, how are you going to beat a Khabib or Tony?
Yeah, absolutely. And much like his opponent, I hope Yancey stays at 170 as well. I think this is just a little bit minor a setback because, as I said in the preview, I thought he came pretty quickly after that fight with Cowboy Oliveira into this fight. I thought that he maybe didn't give himself enough time to recover. And I'm not saying that's the sole reason why he got knocked out, but I do think that was a little bit of a factor in this fight. And I think with taking the damage of this fight and obviously getting knocked out in this fight, I hope Yancey takes a little more time to recover because I think he's a very exciting guy. He's a tough guy. I think even at 170, his length is still pretty good. He's a very long individual with his reach, and I think can cause a lot of problems for a lot of people in this division. So I actually hope we don't see Yancey until sometime mid to late summer because I think he needs just take some time to recover, make sure you don't have any concussions or anything else going on, and let's see you come back and get back on the winning track. That's what would be my advice for Yancey. All right, let's get to Bellator 194 real quickly here. Couple of things I want to notice. I thought the Heather Hardy-Anna Houlihan fight for 2 women that were both known for being championship boxers, not what we expected between these 2 women. Ended up being mostly a grappling match with Houlihan initiating the clinch, Hardy trying a few submissions, but Houlihan really not able to do much of anything in terms of damage or submissions. I agree with the decision to give Hardy the victory, but not really what he expected from these 2 women. I was kind of disappointed a little bit. I was kind of surprised Houlihan did not want to mix it up at all on the feet with Hardy and went to a clinch-based strategy. And for a woman that didn't look like she had those type of grappling skills. I kind of think that's one of the reasons why she lost. She just doesn't have those skills, and I think she was forcing something that just wasn't there.
Yeah, I've interviewed both ladies, and I know that I guess the thing that disappoints me the most is both were saying, we know we need to make this an exciting fight because it's a new division that we're trying to get everyone, invested in. And we also are trying to sell this double event that the UFC and both boxing promoters are open to. They were going to start their fight in MMA and then have a boxing match come later. I think that'll still happen, but I think that they both knew that they needed to make this an exciting fight. And unfortunately, like you said, a few of us were disappointed. I think people were being a little harsh saying it was like super boring. I don't think that it was super boring. I think we just saw two ladies that have both mentioned in when interviewing them that they know they have the boxing there. They've wanted to test their skills that they're learning in wrestling and jujitsu, even in different forms of stand up. And I think that there was a little bit of blame that we can put on the ref, especially in the first round, of not breaking them up sooner in the clinch, in my opinion. Um, but I think that, like you're saying, with Anna, I always hear, when someone's a newbie in their grappling because they don't know when to let go of a submission attempt, or they're just holding on to something that, like you said, isn't there. And I think that we saw a lot of that with Anna's game, and maybe even Heather too. So I guess it was disappointing that both ladies, I would like that they wanted to show what they've been learning and put that into play, because that's where you learn, is when you compete against each other. But I think that if it came down to putting on an exciting performance, maybe third round, you guys stand up and do just stand up and trade if you're really trying to sell this as a big fight.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the strategy for Hulatin was fine in terms of trying to attack Hardy in the clinch and get a takedown. It's just her execution just was not there at all. And that's kind of what made this fight not as exciting as it would be, because like I said, she just doesn't have those skills yet. And there's nothing wrong with that, but she may have had a better chance to win had she abandoned that strategy and switched to, some more kicks and more punches there and try to mix it up a little bit instead of just forcing a takedown, which just really clearly wasn't working for her.
And I think she did try to stand a little bit longer in the third, but I think Heather, probably had realized that she had the fight,
Right.
or was close to, so why stand in there and possibly get caught. But yeah, I mean, both ladies have to develop, but I like that they're going in there not afraid to try new things. People wanted them to stand up and box, and I think it was cool that they were attempting other things. They're obviously trying to become mixed martial artists now.
All right, we had Joe Barton ask, is Bellator getting any closer to being on the UFC's level? I think they're closer, but the biggest difference really between Bellator and the UFC, and this has really been the case since Bellator, started, 10 years ago or whatever, is the depth. They don't have the depth the UFC has. They have a couple of really good guys at the top of just about every division, but it only goes like 3, 4, maybe 5 deep at the most in any division. Whereas the UFC, you can go 10, 11, 12 deep of guys that could legitimately fight for the championship. But Bellator just doesn't have that depth. That's the biggest difference between Bellator and the UFC. If you match up like the top 5 guys at Bellator against the top 5 guys at the UFC, and they all fought, I think it'd be pretty close in terms of what organization would win. But when you start, like I said, getting 6, 7, 8, those are the type of guys that just Bellator doesn't have yet. And that's really going to be the biggest difference if they want to technically take over or compete with the UFC, is getting that depth. And that's really hard to do because the UFC is known as the big organization. So a lot of those guys, will take a chance trying to get to the UFC instead of signing with Bellator just for the sake of saying they fought in the UFC. And Bellator is still seen kind of as a step down in most cases.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that that's what it comes down to. It. I think Bellator, I like that they like to do, they like to think outside the box, doing things like tournaments, mixing it up and doing events with NASCAR and whatnot. But I think that when it comes down to the actual fights being put together, I agree. I think that they just need to, get a few more men and women in there that can compete and fill up those divisions and give us more exciting fights. Because really, when it comes down to it, one, I don't think they're putting out as many cards as the UFC, but also there are, like you said, only a few names that people will always tune into because they're headlining a card.
And then, boy, talk about disappointing. Liam McGarry, just I don't know how you felt, Kayla, but I was very disappointed in his performance. This was, I think, a chance for him to reestablish himself as one of the top fighters at 205 pounds, taking on a guy who I think was making his Bellator debut here in Vadim Nemkov. Let me double check this here. I don't think he had fought in Bellator before. No, he had fought, believe it or not, he fought like 6 times in Risen. And fought for M1 Global in Russia. Obviously trains with the Fedor camp there in Russia. But a guy who obviously showed some skills, but again, I still think someone Liam McGarry was capable of beating. And I didn't feel like Liam showed up in this fight. I don't know. I'm not trying to take anything away from Nemkov because he fought his strategy. He fought it very sound. You know, he never allowed McGarry to really bother him with any shots. But, boy, I thought for a guy that was the champion just not that long ago, kind of mailed this one in and just didn't seem like he was a guy that used to be champion. I could put it that way. I mean, he just got absolutely torn apart in this fight and got knocked out by leg kicks.
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't catch this one. But yeah, that's disappointing. Like you said, former champion, and this was this other guy's debut
for Bellator. Yes.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
I think you can safely say I looked at his record. He hasn't fought anybody close to the level of Liam McGarry. Let me double check here, but yeah, I mean he's fought nobody close to this level. You know, and yeah. Actually, you know what? He did fight at Bellator 182, winning by knockout over a guy named Felipe Lin. So this was his second fight in Bellator, but first on a televised main card. That was a prelim Spike TV fight. But I wasn't very happy with his performance, and I hate to say it, but Liam McGarry, maybe he's done. I don't know. Maybe that Phil Davis fight just completely took him out of the picture, because since that fight, Kayla, he has not looked the same. He has not done very well since getting completely dominated in that fight by the former UFC fighter.
Yeah, or maybe, you know, the guy that he faced is someone to watch, like you said, if he's coming off of 2 finishes, 2 knockouts.
Let's see. We got a couple questions before we get to the main event, co-main event. What's my favorite grappling hold? I'm assuming you probably means submission there, Steven. I would say Americana for me. That's what I like to hit in class, if I can. Do you have a preference on your favorite submission, Kayla?
Favorite submission. Well, I'm not in class, so I unfortunately
what would you like
can't pull
to see as
off
a fan that you're like, man, that was a good one?
That I like to see. I like a good Darce.
Okay.
I think those are always interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to think off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I think a good Darce choke.
Peter, did you guys watch Cage Warriors this weekend? No, I didn't get to Cage Warriors, Peter, unfortunately. I'll have to check that out, but I did not get to it. So I, therefore, don't have any thoughts, and if I did, they would be misinformed, and I don't want to give a misinformed opinion.
But if you want to do a recap, we'll definitely tune in.
All right, let's see here. Patricky Pitbull against Derek Campos. Pretty much what I expected.
Knockout, right?
I expected both guys to come out swinging, throwing, and yeah, that's what we saw. We saw a great fight. Pitbull was the one that was able to hit the hardest there and get the finish there in the first round. I think that's pretty much how I saw this fight going. Somebody was going to get a very quick knockout. It just happened to be Pitbull, and that's what he could do to you. He definitely tries to throw a home run on every single punch, and he was able to do so against Derek Campos, a very tough individual. And you know, Pitbull's look pretty good. I mean, he has that win over Ben Henderson, now this knockout over Derek Campos. You know, he's trying to make his climb back to the lightweight title. Obviously fought Michael Chandler for it. What was that, like maybe 18 months ago? So he very much has the title back on his sights, and doing things like this can get him back into the picture.
Yeah, I forget when he was fighting Benson Henderson, he was like either tied or that fight like broke some sort of record of, I don't know if it was like most fights in Bellator or maybe like consecutive wins in his division. I don't remember what record he was breaking, but yeah, that's a guy. If we're talking about having depth or one of the top guys in Bellator, he's definitely one of those. He's always exciting to watch, and I'm excited to see him get back and closer to that title shot. Do you
Oh,
think
Peter,
he gets the winner of Brent and or of Primus and Chandler?
I here's the thing.
Who else
If
is Brent
if
there?
if Primus wins again, I think he might. But I think hasn't he lost already twice to Michael Chandler?
I don't know if it's
I can
the
double
case.
check that. Obviously, he lost. What was that? 2 years ago when they refought for the vacant title when Will Brooks left for the UFC. But I think he lost to. Let's see. Let's check here. Yeah, he lost to Michael Chandler back in 2011 as well. So he already has
Mm,
2 losses to Michael Chandler. So that's why I'm thinking I don't know if they'll book a third that quickly.
yeah.
If Primus wins, I think you can very likely make the case to see Pitbull versus Primus. However, I do think Michael Chandler is going to win the rematch.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one.
All right. Peter was saying Cage Warriors is actually this weekend. Okay, I haven't looked at the card yet, Peter, so I don't have. Not really sure what to think yet. But thanks for keeping me apprised of that. That's coming on the 24th from Liverpool. So I'll have to check it out on Fight Pass. I do know Molly McCann, who actually trains here in Michigan with Amanda Bobby Cooper. And I think they actually had a pre-fight meet and greet with Amanda Bobby Cooper coming over to support her training partner. So I'm very intrigued by her fight just because of the ties here to Michigan. So that will be the fight I'm looking forward to, though, Peter, for Cage Warriors. And I think that's the co-main event of the evening. Or main event, one of the two. Let me double check on that. Let's see here. Was there another question that I missed here?
I see one from Stephen Peter
Yeah.
that says, which is preferred more for preparing for an MMA fight, weight training or cardio?
That's hard for me to answer because I've never prepared for an MMA fight. I think it really just depends on the individual, and I think it also depends who you're fighting. I think if you're fighting someone like Derek Lewis, you might focus more on weight training. You know what I mean? But if you're taking on someone that's super fast, like a Sage Northcutt, you might focus more on cardio. I think it really depends on the camp. I think both of those things are important, but I think as far as for a camp, you really got to kind of tailor to what fight you think is going to happen. Because you don't want to get too bulky against the guy that's lightning fast, and you don't want to have, you don't want to have no strength against the guy who's really strong. So I think it really depends on who you're fighting and really just what type of body frame you have, because everybody's frame's different. Some people have no problem putting on muscle. Other people have a really hard time, bulking up. Not everyone can look like Tyron Woodley, or whatever.
Be just gifted.
Yeah,
Coming, yeah.
it's really kind of is a weird genetic. Not everyone can get like jacked looking like that. It's harder to do than you think. Speaking of guys not
And I think
jacked,
too,
Roy Nelson took on Matt Mitrione in the main event here of Bellator 194. What did you think of the fight? What did you think of the decision? I think the referees got it right. Nelson did have his moments, especially late in this fight, but Mitrione was definitely getting the better of the two standing, and it just didn't seem like Roy Nelson. I think that this stage of his career and being through so many wars and getting hit with so many shots, I just think that he has now come to the realization that maybe that's not the best idea to do, and is really starting to rely more on his jiu-jitsu skills and his wrestling skills. And I think that's really been since his fight against Derek Lewis, where he's really started to push more of his grappling skills, which was always the X factor with Roy Nelson. Everyone's like, he's a black belt under Renzo Gracie, but we never see him use it. And that was true.
right.
We almost never saw him use it. But I would say in the last 2 years, he's really tried to rely on that, and it didn't seem like a guy that talks about hitting home runs. If this was baseball, he'd be the best home run hitter in the game. Doesn't seem like he wants to hit those home runs anymore, Kayla, and he's safe with getting a single and going base to base now. To steal an analogy that he used for baseball.
I think Matt came into this fight with a really good game plan. I think he was using angles, and I think that once Roy saw, hey, he's learned from our previous fight, and he's not going to make it easy for me to get that knockout or find that opening. I think that's why we saw him go for those takedown attempts, and also adding to what you're saying, he's just getting older and maybe wants to show off those other skills he has. I think that unfortunately, I don't know if it was a matter of, because I don't know what rules, were being taken in this fight night, since no one's under the same rules, yet. But I think that he wasn't doing enough down there. The takedowns aren't enough now. I think if you're going with the new rules, you have to do more when you have someone down on the ground. And I don't know. I know people were saying like, oh, he wasn't there, he wasn't present. And I know I'd seen something about him being sick. So maybe that came into play too, where he got into that fight and just started feeling really shitty. But yeah, I think that Mitrione, played this fight in his favor and got the win.
And also, I'm not disappointed with Roy's performance because, again, why take a fight that's maybe 50-50 on the feet when you clearly have the grappling advantage? So I get his strategy, again, a sound strategy. But I was disappointed that he didn't get that finish because he got the crucifix. Mitrione, to me, was basically asking to get Americana'd. I don't know if you saw him really pressing up against the head. I was like, I'm watching this fight going, why are you Americana him, Roy? Eventually, he finally went for it. Mitrione straightens his arm, but Roy doesn't step over to finish the straight armbar and just kind of gives up on it. And I thought if he would have kept at it, I think he might have got a tap there. I just because he's that much better of a jiu-jitsu player. And so I don't know if, again, maybe he, like you said, he was feeling sick. Maybe he didn't feel he could pull that step over. But it's funny, we literally just learned that in class, like I think the week before, where you step over from a failed Americana on the straight arm, you step up, you pull it. So if I know that as a white belt, you got to believe Roy Nelson knows that, right? You know what I mean? It's like he had an opportunity there, I think, to finish it. And for whatever reason, he decided not to chase after it. And I think that was kind of a mistake because I think had he stayed on that, Kayla, might have been able to kind of cement that he was actually going for a finish instead of kind of a half-assed Americana that didn't work out. He's just like, oh well. I don't know. But that's why I do agree with the judges getting the decision right, though. I think Mitrione did enough to win. And
he advances in the tournament.
And he will face the winner of Frank Mir against Fedor Emelianenko, which will take place sometime in April over in Chicago.
I thought he faces the winner of Bader and Mo.
Oh, crap. You are right. Yeah, no, you're right. That's right. He is facing the winner of Bader and King. I think it's because Chael Sonnen was in the cage with him, interviewing him.
That was a little weird, yeah.
Yeah, that was like, man, you guys might be fighting each other, but whatever. That's right. And he did say he thinks he would take on Ryan Bader. But we'll see. We'll see.
Predicting.
All right, that was Bellator 194. Before we get to UFC Orlando, I just want to mention these events real quickly just because I thought they were all very entertaining, and I think they're worth a look on Fight Pass, where all three of these events took place in some form or another. Real quickly on Polaris 6, especially for our fans watching on MMA UK, I actually did a preview of the main event of Polaris 6 on MMA UK, so I hope everybody enjoyed it, and I think I was spot on in my preview, not to toot my own horn too much, Kayla. But I said in this fight, in the main event, Craig Jones is going to start the match, get right to his butt, and look for that setup on the heel hook. And Jake Shields needed to get past the legs in order to win this. Well, Craig Jones did what Craig Jones does. He got the legs, he went inverted, scooped him up, almost had a calf slicer, and I was watching with a friend. As soon as he went inverted and grabbed both legs, I was like, it's over. It was over, and I don't know if Jake Shields realized it, but I was like, it's over. And it took about a minute or so to work and get the heel hook, but eventually got it 1:05 into the first round. And it isn't so much that Craig Jones won, Kayla. It's the fact that he was able to do exactly what you thought he was going to do against a very high-level jiu-jitsu opponent like Jake Shields, and then do so in a minute. this guy is just absolutely incredible. I mean, other than his matchup against Gordon Ryan, I don't think there's too many people that can stop his setups from those 50-50 positions. It's incredible. I know there's been a hinting at MMA, but boy, is he just a supreme grappler. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, why transition over there when you can at least, work in your craft and build your name there even more? But that's exciting that he can always transition over into MMA 'cause I love when those grapplers come in.
That great performance by him, and also speaking of MMA, obviously Ben Henderson fought on the card as well. He took out AJ Azagram via unanimous decision. Of course, there was a chant there. If you haven't seen it, in the opening 30 seconds, Ben Henderson actually double legs Azagram off the stage there at the Indigo Theater.
Saw that, yeah.
That was pretty crazy. Luckily, both guys weren't hurt, and the match was able to continue. Then later on, he pushes them off the side of the stage, like into where the referees and judges are, sitting off stage into a table. You could tell. I don't know if I've ever seen Ben Henderson that amped up. You could tell he just did not like AJ Azagram, and I think the same could be said of AJ. But you could tell that he just wanted to go in there and just kind of rough up Azagram. I mean, neither guy had I think the closest to a submission, Ben Henderson actually had, I thought, a pretty deep omoplata at one point, but this was almost like an MMA-style jiu-jitsu match. Ben Henderson was very much trying, I think, to, be mean to AJ Azagram, and mission accomplished because he was able to do that and get the victory.
Awesome.
And then real quickly, Massine Held, former, Bellator and current UFC fighter, obviously a very good grappler in his own right. He beats Chris Fishgold via armbar, so that was fun to see. So that was Polaris 6. Check the main card out of Fight Pass. Then EBI 15, boy, talk about upset city. John Calistine, who actually fills in for his Renzo Gracie teammate, Eddie Cummins, not only fills in, but wins. And he does so over the guy everyone wanted to see in the finals against his teammate Eddie Cummins and Gio Martinez, which I think is even more crazy. However, there was some controversy, and I want to get your thoughts on this, and I think a lot of people that are into submission grappling would agree that this may be something to look at. I don't think it's as big of an issue, but I do think it's a little bit of an issue. In the finals, in the overtime, it appears as though Calistine lets his arm intentionally get hurt and armbarred, so he can escape and obviously have a chance to win in his portion of the overtime. And the question that was posed, I saw this on Reddit, I had to think about it, but I want to get your thoughts, Caleb, was, do you think it's fair to let your arm intentionally get hurt so you can get out of the submission so you have a chance to win in your time and either win by submission or build up more ride time? And whether or not that's fair or if that's just a little loophole in the rules. And I wanted to get your thoughts because some people thought that may have been intentional from Calistine to let his arm get injured in order to try to win the match.
One, that's super dangerous and gutsy because, you could possibly be out for who knows how long or permanent damage. But I think that if it was so obvious, or at least obvious enough to where people are questioning if it was intentional, then yeah, maybe, that's someone that's found a loophole, and that's something that the, not only judges and refs, but this was EBI, you said?
Yeah, EBI 15.
They'll have to go in there and figure out a way to regulate that so someone couldn't, because yeah, I don't think that's cool. If you found a loophole like that, and it's not a good look. You don't want your athletes to start purposely injuring themselves just to advance and hopefully get that win.
Now, this would really only be an issue in the final, because obviously if you're in the first round and your arm breaks in overtime, you're probably not going to be able to continue for the rest of the matches. So that's the thing. It's not a strategy you can use in other rounds of the tournament, number one. So that's why I don't think it's a huge issue. Number two, like you said, you don't know how serious your arm is going to be hurt. I mean, if your arm gets completely broken, do you feel that confident you're going to submit the guy in your portion of the overtime? Because even if you take the back mount position, if you have one broken arm, well, you can't choke with that arm, right? That arm's broken. And you got to try to choke one-handed.
Can they even let someone
These are high-level
with a
black
broken
belts.
arm?
You can't rely on trying to choke out another black belt with one arm. It's possible, but I'm saying you can't rely on that.
Mm-hmm. Will they even let someone compete and continue on if an arm's broken? I can't
I
imagine that
mean,
they do that.
in EBI, it hasn't really happened. However, we did see in the, I believe it was ADCC, Roger Gracie broke Jacare's arm. Jacare
Right.
stuffed his broken arm inside his belt and continued the match. He landed a takedown and rode out the 2 points and won the match with the broken arm. And Roger Gracie couldn't believe that they let him continue. Just if you want to see how beastly Jacare is, go back and watch that match because it's absolutely incredible. He just stuffs his broken arm in his belt. It's one of the most beastly things I've ever seen in my life. So I think it all depends on, the tournament or how severe it is, whether there's blood or anything. But that's another thing too. If it looks bad, you could very easily see them stopping it and you losing. So that's why I was like, I don't think it's something that needs to be changed unless all of a sudden now it becomes a trend. But again, this is all if it gets to overtime. If you beat the guy in regulation, then this is not even an issue.
Yeah, I think that I can't see it becoming a trend. I mean, that would be really intense. And then, like you said, because it would only be in those circumstances of a final. Hopefully, this was one of the only times we'll see that. But tricky, that got tricky.
Yeah, it was something that was brought up, and I have no problem with people looking at it critically, but I don't think a rule change needs to be done for that because I think that's a very risky strategy because you don't know how that's going to pan out. Real quickly, Glory 50, that was on Fight Pass as well as ESPN. Gregorian winning the rematch against Mirthel Groenhart, knocking him out in the first round. Boy, did not see that coming. I thought Groenhart would be able to defend the title, but man, Gregorian has what he does. I mean, the dude, I think I said coming into this fight, has over an 80% knockout rate in kickboxing. There aren't too many guys that have that high a clip. He's one of them, and that's just what he can do. A very impressive performance winning the rematch. I hope we get a trilogy at some point because very rarely do you see in any form of combat sports where you have a win by each gentleman and both were finishes. I think that's what makes a trilogy so intriguing is because they both have knocked each other out very silly. And so I'm very intrigued for a third fight at some point. I don't know if that's what they're going to do next, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. And I think everyone would be, considering how the first two fights have went, something crazy is going to happen. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Benjamin Ajabuji picks up another tournament victory. We'll see if he wants to fight Rico Verhoeven again. Guto Inosanch wins the tournament against Tafa, Junior Tafa, who's actually a training partner of Mark Hunt. But the gash on his head sustained from Tafa, he couldn't continue. So that was kind of unfortunate because I was really looking forward to Inosanch against Ajabuji in a rematch. We didn't get to see that, but that's just how it plays out sometimes in the tournament. Sitsong Pion, the lightweight champion, absolutely dominating Baya. Wasn't much there. I think the biggest controversy of the night was between Casey Green and newcomer Moreno, where it looked like Casey Green was going to win the fight, probably 29-28. Then Moreno lands 2 knockdowns in the last minute to force a bonus round. And then in the bonus round, Moreno gets it. I didn't really particularly agree with the second knockdown call because it was kind of a push kick. So I think Casey Green kind of got screwed over a little bit there. So I thought that was very unfortunate. I like Casey Green, a guy I've interviewed before. Thought he got a little bit job there. But Glory 50, definitely check it out. A lot of exciting action on Fight Pass as well as ESPN. So definitely check that out. Especially, like I said, that main event between Groenhart and Gregorian. Let's see here. And also real quickly on Glory, in 2 weeks, we get to see the return of Badr Hari. In Rotterdam. So if you are interested in checking out Glory for the first time, that's not a bad fight to do so. Glory 51, I think that's March 3rd, I think. Yeah. Also the same night as UFC 222. So
another packed week.
That'll be a pretty good day of action there. Obviously, it'll be earlier in the afternoon with the time change and everything. So at least fans here in the U.S. will be able to see both at a reasonable hour. Anyway, so. All right, let's get to UFC Orlando here, Kayla. We got 10 fights. No, not 10. 12 fights for the card that starts on UFC Fight Pass at 4 in the East, 1 on the left coast where you're at, Kayla. We got some interesting fights here on the Fight Pass portion. always excited to see this guy, Smiling Sam Alvey. He will be returning, taking on Marcin Pricino. Always interested in seeing Sam have a fight. Always a very interesting guy. Hani Yahya against Russell Doan at bantamweight. I think that's a pretty good fight as well. Also interested in seeing Eric Shelton against Alec Perez. I think Eric Shelton is a very promising prospect in the flyweight division.
I agree.
Let's see. We also have Alan Joboy against Ben Saunders. Angela Hill against Marina Moroz in the strawweight division. That should be fun. Marion Renault against Sarah McMahon. And then it ends with the highlight of the prelims, Henan Barao, former featherweight champion, against Brian Keller. What was the fight or fights you're looking forward to the most there here on this undercard, Kayla?
Yeah, definitely excited to see Alvey. The Renault and McMahon's a good one there. I also am intrigued with Manny Bermudez. I think he's making his UFC debut, and I believe he's 10-0, and I forgot which promotion he's coming from, but I know he was kind of their star over there, so he's someone that a lot of people are looking forward to his debut. A lot of guys lately have been, giving us great performances with their first UFC fight, so he might be one of those two to come in and show us what he's got. Let's see. I think he's a Cage Titans and CFX champion.
Yeah, Cage Titans and CES, which is kind of like the biggest promotion for the Northeast. So those are some pretty credible organizations. And obviously being 11-0 with, it looks like he only has 2 decision victories, so 9 finishes. So that's, definitely looks like an intriguing prospect, and he's only 23 years old. And a pretty big bantamweight, too, at 5'10". So that should be intriguing to see here. So, all right, let's get to the main card here of like Kayla's. Oh, looks like her video might have froze. Let me get her back on here. Talk about this main card here. No worries there. There we go.
Something always has to be wrong when I go live on Facebook. I was thinking it was a real breezy, easy show.
Right. All right. You didn't miss anything. I was just saying we're going to get to the main card here, preview that, get to picks. Starting off again with the fight I'm super excited for. Representing Flint, Michigan, the Platinum Man himself, Platinum Mike Perry, taking on Max Griffin. Platinum Mike Perry, 100% knockout rate in his 11 victories to just 2 losses. His opponent in Griffin, a little more well-rounded. I think he's finished 10 of his, I think he has like 8 or 9 finishes total, half by knockout. I would, again, like any time with Mike Perry, if you stand with Mike Perry, you have a chance of getting caught with a big right hand. If you grapple with Mike Perry, you might be able to outwork him and get a decision victory. For Max Griffin, I think that's what you got to do. You got to try to tie up Mike Perry. You got to try to make him wear your weight. You got to make him really use a lot of energy to get out of those clinch situations. Do a lot to make sure you're working his arms, pummeling, even throwing kicks to his arms. That's how you're going to stop Mike Perry. And you really got a much plan to try to put him away later in the fight. I wouldn't try to take out Mike Perry in the first round. That's not a good idea. You got to make this go into the 3rd round. You got to try to Mike Perry chase for it. You got to try to get him frustrated and do something stupid where he overextends himself, and you can take advantage of that either with a takedown or counter strike. So Max Griffin really has to be on his P's and Q's, because if you give Mike Perry an inch, he will knock you out. And it's not going to be, he had to throw 30 strikes on the ground to knock you out. He just needs 1. That's all it takes for him to end your night. And he's doing so where he lives and trains now in Orlando. There's going to be a huge pop in the crowd. He wants to get that fight back from Ponzinibbio and get back on the winning track. So Mike Perry, he's going to be all fired up for this matchup in Central Florida.
Yeah, I think with his last fight, something that he was really open about, where he saw some holes in his game. It was his cardio and, going into those later rounds. So I completely agree. I think that it's up to Max Griffin to tire him out, to take it into that third round. But what I'm excited is, I don't think Mike Perry is foolish enough to not have worked on that hole in his game, and that's what I'm most excited to see, is how has he evolved into going into these later rounds, into going to to your defense against these guys that want to just sit and hold you and tire you out. So I'm really excited just to see how he's evolved since his last fight.
Absolutely. His cardio definitely is something we'll have to see if it's gotten better. And also, one thing that will help with that, Kayla, I would like for him to throw some change-ups. I'd like for him to throw some half power shots to get people thinking, get people going, wait a minute, I thought this guy only swings for home runs. Get that in their head. Play some head games a little bit. Then come out round two, throwing the home runs that you're capable of. And I think that'll also help his conditioning too. Instead of just home run, home run, home run.
Right.
Throw some swings for singles in there, and I think that'll help him out a lot as well. Because that's one of the things that drains his conditioning, is the fact he throws so hard.
Yeah.
Your body only can do so much of those without slowing down. We had a question real quick here from Peter. Stephen Peter, how are opportunities like for women who are not fighters in MMA like? How are the opportunities? I guess this would be more for you, Kayla. I couldn't really answer that. I would guess good. I don't know. It's a weird question.
You don't have an opinion on this? Okay, how are opportunities like for women who are not fighters in MMA? I'm going to assume you are speaking about maybe the other positions, whether it's a ring girl or a reporter.
I would say they're open to it. I mean, there are tons of, female reporters like yourself that are covering MMA. So I would say they're healthy. It's not like they're zero.
I think that the sport's evolving, and I think that, they're realizing that there are a lot of female fans now, and the more that these women's divisions open up, or the more that the sport grows worldwide, they're recognizing that, hey, let's bring in some female energy into the sport. So I think the opportunities are great. The opportunities are endless. Thanks for the question.
All right, next fight of the evening, we go to the light heavyweight division. Ilir Latifi against Ovince St. Preux. Very intriguing fight. Obviously, you have the big, strong, and athletic individual in Ovince St. Preux against the very powerful, and stocky fighter, and obviously a great wrestler in Ilir Latifi. To me, the biggest thing is, can Latifi get on the inside to land one of those big, powerful uppercuts or overhands that he's capable of? And obviously, can he get inside to take Ovince St. down? And when he does get inside, even though Latifi is a very strong individual, Ovince is an absolute monster too. How will he be able to kind of outmuscle Ovince? That's a tough task to do. And like kind of we said with Melander, Ovince can do some things that other light heavyweights can't. He's a very athletic guy. He can hit you at really weird angles. He can hit submissions at very weird angles. We've seen that happen a lot of times. Just because you get in close to him doesn't mean you're by all means safe. He can do a lot of very athletic things that are very hard to train for. And also, I think he's probably going to be faster than Latifi. And I think that's a big difference too. So, and not to mention his height advantage, his reach too. He's going to have a 7-inch reach advantage, and he's going to be 5 inches taller than the Swede. And I think that it's not impossible to overcome, but those are tough odds to overcome. I'm not going to lie to you; those are going to be tough for Latifi to overcome in this matchup.
Yeah, I think this is probably the more intriguing one on the main card, because the other fights we have an idea of how it could go, but this one to me is really not up in the air. I'm so curious to see how each other are going to, what each other's game plans are going to be. But I think that both of them are in a spot of number 5 and number 8. So they know that they want to get an exciting finish, on a card that's going to get a lot of attention to advance into the rankings and hopefully get, maybe he's already getting a top 5 guy, but obviously OSP would want to get someone within those top 5. And he's coming off of 2 performance of the night, so why not keep that momentum going? So I think out
Yeah,
of all of the fights here, yes, I love, the idea of a Mike Perry knockout. And of course, we're going to get into the and the main event, but this one is a very intriguing fight to me.
you're right, because we've seen Ovens get out-wrestled before, like his fight against Ryan Bader, but then we've seen him stop good wrestlers, like his fight against Patrick Cummins, where he's able to stop the takedown and get the knockout. So OSP is certainly capable of keeping this fight standing, where I think he is, I would say he's the better fighter on the feet. But if it goes to the ground, Ovens is not great off his back. We saw that in his fight against Glover Teixeira. He's definitely not a guy that's really going to threaten you with submissions off his back. Where he's dangerous is he's on top. I mean, the dude's landed 3 Von Flue chokes. So if he gets on top of you, he can do some crazy things. So that's what I'm saying. That's why it's so intriguing, because of his athleticism. You don't quite know what you're going to get from OSP from fight to fight. And that's why he's always an exciting guy. And obviously he's taking on a guy that is very much capable of knocking him out as well in Latifi.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to that co-main event, as you're alluding to, Kayla. In the strawweight division, Tecia Torres against Jessica Andrade. Andrade coming off an absolute dominant performance over former title challenger Claudia Gadelha, beating her fellow countrywoman pretty soundly in a 3-round affair. Tecia Torres is coming off a win for sure, but a little harder fight, obviously defeating Michelle Waterson at UFC 218, but she was able to get the job done against the former Invicta champion. Even though they're both, I think Andrade is 5'3", Torres is 5'1" or 5 foot, so they're both towards the smaller end of the spectrum in terms of height. But Andrade, obviously a fighter that has previously fought at 135 pounds. So you would think in terms of size, Andrade would be the bigger individual, even though Torres is a very physical specimen as well. She definitely has a lot of muscle strength. So I think this is maybe one of the few times where Torres could possibly actually get out-muscled. We don't really see that in her fights. She's very much been able to control a lot of situations. And I think one of the reasons why she was able to beat Michelle Waterson. Michelle just doesn't have that strength at 115 like she has at 105. And fighting someone like Tecia was going to be tough for her, especially in those grappling exchanges. Standing up where she was going to have the advantage, but Tecia never really allowed that fight to get too much at range. And that's why you got to really credit her at that fight. In this fight, however, the biggest difference and one of the reasons why Ticia's going to be at a disadvantage in this fight, Ticia's not a finisher. She has one finish in 10 fights. And you're taking on a stone cold killer here in Andrade, who can take a lot of punishment. We saw that in her fight against Joanna, and she even took some shots against Claudia. She just keeps coming forward. She's like the female Terminator. Yeah, she just keeps coming. She keeps throwing hard. She can hit hard into the 3rd round. Her power has, even in the Joanna fight, her power wasn't waning. She can throw hard for 25 minutes. So in a 15-minute fight, she has no problem with that. She's an absolute monster. Claudia had trouble taking her down, and even when she did, Kayla, she was able to get right back up. And Ticia's not quite the level of grappler that Gadelha is. She's not a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
So I think for Tecia, she has to try. She got to be on her feet, and she has to do her tornado movement where she's moving in and out. She has to kind of fight like she did against Felice Herrig. She has to be in and out quick, touch her out, and just frustrate Andrade and make Andrade try to chase her around and just be on her horse. That's, I think, how Tecia Torres can win. But if Andrade is able to land power shots, get in the inside, or even take Tecia down, Ticia's going to be in some trouble, a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I think that Tecia is someone that a lot of people are talking up, and for good reason. But she was already being, spoken of for title talk, and I think that this is really going to be a very telling fight if she can figure out how to get past Jessica Andrade's pressure, power, everything that you're saying, and find a way to break her down. Or not even break down, but just kind of survive in those 15 minutes. Because Jessica Andrade is, I think, she's already broken a lot of records within her division just for being the amount of strikes that she's putting out. She's a very active fighter in there. But Tisha, like they've said, she doesn't get a lot of finishes, like you're saying, but she does know how to score points. So I think it's just a matter of, like you said, getting in and out, getting those points, avoiding the strength of Jessica Andrade, unless for some reason she's been training and has some crazy camp where she's just evolved her grappling game. Who knows? I hope so. I would hope that she's working towards that if she, is in title talk for facing the champion soon. But it's just going to be a very telling fight. I think that if Jessica gets that win, then absolutely she's in title talk as well, and rightfully so.
The X factor I actually see, Tisha Torres' wife, Raquel Pennington, fought Jessica Andrade twice. So there's going to be a lot of insight to what Jessica Andrade does very well. And I think that's something that's very unique about this matchup. So I think not only that, she's training now in Colorado with Raquel, and I think her conditioning, which was already pretty sound, I think is getting even better because she's training at altitude. So like you said, she's known for being a point fighter, and that's how she's going to win this match, is being a point fighter. Doing anything else would be a detriment and would probably get her finished. I think that's plain and simple in this one. All right, let's get to that main event here. I hate to belittle both these guys, Kayla, but one of the more off the wall main events we've seen for a UFC on Fox card. Would you agree?
Off the wall? How so?
Yeah, I mean, Stevens is not a guy who's fought for a championship, not a guy that's been a champion. Josh Emmett has like 3 fights in the UFC. Only one of them has been on a main card. You know what I mean? Like,
I think
it's an odd main event for Fox. I mean, we've had title fights go on Fox. You know what I mean? Like, we've had some really big #1 contender fights, and this is a nice fight night card, a night fight pass main event, but it seems a little odd being the main event of a Fox card. I guarantee when they knew a Fox event was coming up at the end of February, I guarantee Jeremy Stevens or Josh Emmett was not on the radar to main event when they first booked that card.
Even after they're both coming off of huge finishes, and
I'm not saying I don't like the fight.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to bring in, we know that we're going to most likely, I want to say 99% sure we're going to get a nice finish, an exciting finish.
Well, the thing is, the Fox ratings have been slowly going down. So you would think an attempt to want to raise those, they'd give us a big time matchup. And as much as I love this fight, in fact, I called for it after both these guys wins to fight each other. So this is a fight I want to see, legitimately. Don't get that twisted. But I think it's a little odd to put as the main event of a Fox card. That's all. And I think that's a fair question to ask, or a fair question to comment on.
Well, let's see. We'll see how the numbers work. Let's see if this helped or not.
Man, I don't know. I'm just saying, for a company that has had some bad ratings with Fox, I don't feel like this is going to help it. Maybe I'm wrong, but all right, let's get to the actual fight, though. Honestly, I mean, it's going to really be who hits first. I mean, both these guys are really big featherweights. Obviously, both guys used to fight at 155 pounds. They both proved that they have absolute dynamite in their hands. The intriguing thing is whether either tries to initiate wrestling. We've seen Stevens try that in some fights, most notably his fight against Max Holloway, even a little bit in his fight against Charles Oliveira. Emmett has a wrestling background as well. If either starts to feel like the stand-up is not going in their favor, how will that play out? Also, Emmett did miss weight his last fight, so you got to look at, will he make weight, number one, and number two, Stevens has gone 5 rounds before, even at 145. So how will his conditioning hold up for Emmett? Being a guy that has had trouble make cut, if he doesn't get a finish, can he hold up? Because Stevens has proven that he has actually pretty good conditioning, despite being a guy that throws a lot of power shots. So, that's why I think there's a lot of questions for Josh Emmett, even though he's ranked higher than Stevens. He's coming off the bigger victory, knocking out Ricardo Lamas. How will he deal with the pressure of his first main event? This is now the 3rd or 4th main event for Stevens. He's fought some of the best in 155 and 145. Guy that's been around the UFC since he was like 20 years old. The pressure's not going to be there on him. So, how will Emmett deal kind of in this new environment against a guy who's pretty much done everything, like I said, except fight for a UFC championship?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with all of that. I think it's going to come down to the pressure on Emmett. If he can fall back on that wrestling and be able to accomplish it. And one thing that I've really enjoyed with Jeremy Stevens is for someone who's been around for so long and you think you know what you're going to get, his last couple of fights, he's shown like, hey, you guys think I'm just this knockout artist or whatever, and I have all these other things that I'm pulling out of my back pocket, whether it's the leg kicks, just the way that he was talking about, oh, with this last fight with Joo-Ho Choi, like it's just going to be, we're going to test each other's chin, and then he kind of threw in some just different stuff in there. So I think that that's what's intriguing is I really have enjoyed seeing him evolve as a fighter, and that he still has stuff that he wants to showcase in there. But both guys have said they're going to test each other's chins. We'll see if it happens. I think either way, it's going to be an exciting fight because both guys are just performers. They don't sleep on those opportunities to get a finish.
And also, I want to give you a shout out, Kayla, for your UFC Orlando Fight Facts article on MMA UK. So, in addition to this very program you're listening, give Kayla's article a look on MMA UK for some more interesting facts about this fight here in Central Florida coming up this weekend.
Thank you.
No problem. With that said, let's get to picks here for this main card, UFC Orlando, this Saturday, February 24th, from the Amway Arena in Orlando. It's going to start 8 in the East, 5 in the West, and I believe for our friends in the United Kingdom, I think that's 1 a.m. in the morning for the start on that main card. So it'll be a late night for you all as usual in the UK. So first fight of the evening, welterweight division, Mike Perry against Max Griffin. Going with my boy Mike Perry. It's hard for me to pick against the Flint native, so I'm going to go with Platinum Perry in this one.
Yeah, I'm a believer. I think that he's worked on his cardio, and I'm so excited just to see him even more evolved, and I think we're going to get another finish with Mike Perry.
Ovens St. Peru, a.k.a. OSP, against the Sledgehammer Alir Latifi in the light heavyweight division. I think OSP is just going to be too athletic for the Swede, so I'm going to go with the former Tennessee football player Ovens St. Peru to win this one.
I am as well. I think he has a few more tricks up his sleeve, so OSP for me.
Jessica Edrage against Tisha Torres, as you alluded to, Kayla. Probably the winner gets a shot at the strawweight title. Going with Jessica Andrade in this one. I think her ability to take shots, move forward, and I also think that she's just the better finisher of the two, I think will be a big difference in this fight. So I'm going to go with the Brazilian in this one.
My gut was telling me to go with Andrade literally up until this morning. For some reason, I think, the factors that are coming into play, like you said, Torres's partner, having fought Andrade before, I don't know why I have a gut feeling that she's going to be able to survive and outpoint and get a win. So I'm going to go with Torres.
Main event of the evening, Josh Emmett against Jeremy Stevens. I'm going to go with Jeremy Stevens. I think that while Emmett does have certainly the power to knock out Jeremy, I think Stevens is the more well-rounded striker. I think he throws in a lot of nice kicks well. And if you're able to take shots from the Korean Super Bowl, you can probably take shots from just about anybody. So I'm going to go with Little Heathen Jeremy Stevens to win this one.
I think that Josh Emmett is just a star in the making. I am a believer in Team Alpha Male guys right now, so something's telling me that he's going to pull off this win.
All right, those are our picks for UFC Orlando. Again, she's Kayla Bailey. You can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at fangirl_MMA. I am your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham, and then it's at the Jim Graham on Instagram as well. Of course, as I said in the opening, do it again if you haven't already done so. Like MMA World and like MMA UK on Facebook so you can get notified of this and other programs and interviews that happen pretty much every day here on our Facebook pages as we do our best to bring you some awesome content like this show and interviews and the latest articles like Kayla's article and whatnot. So please like our Facebook pages, MMA World and MMA UK as well. So any other final thoughts, Kayla, as we end this week's Beyond the Cage?
Just that it's nice to be back and talking MMA with you. Thank you guys for everyone that was watching, and submitted some questions in and kept the conversation going. And enjoy the fights this weekend.
All right, for Kayla Beatty, I'm your host, Jim Graham. Thank you again for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage. Goodbye, everybody.